Hi, everybody. Today I am speaking with Julia Taylor, WordPress expert and founder of the Geek Pack. Hi, Julia. How are you today?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor to be here.
I am so happy to have you here. And we're going to dive into your story because you have created an amazing community out there and they all love you so much. And I want to show them where you came from. So before we start, can you tell everyone what you do and who you do it for?
Sure. So I'm a web developer by trade. I'm completely self-taught, coding, all that kind of fun stuff. I say fun, not everyone thinks it's fun. And I now teach other people, primarily women, how to do the hard things with WordPress. So the things that they're able to charge more for, but that a lot of people are kind of a little bit scared to do. So we've got the community to support them. We've got the skills. We really dive into coding and web development. So that's what I do now.
And I love it because, as everyone knows or might not know, my beginnings in entrepreneurship were with WordPress and making WordPress sites on the side. And to be fully transparent, the way that I know Julia is because I was running my premium program, Be Found. And at the time, I was making all of those websites. So I connected with Julia and she connected me with some of her students who made amazing websites for my clients. And it was such a love fest in there. I just wanted to get that out of the way, that I have so much gratitude for you and for your community because they really helped us out and my clients were really happy. So it's a really great place to go and find those web resources.
Wonderful.
And why don't we just get started with your early beginnings? Because I really want to understand what made you you. So if you could tell me your story of what it was like growing up being you, where are you from?
Okay, so I'm from a very small town in North Georgia. It's called Ellijay. Tiny little town. Grew up there, kind of born and raised in Georgia. That being said, I'm incredibly fortunate, and I think a lot of what I've done throughout my life and the confidence that I've had to kind of grow this business really is from my early years. I was homeschooled. My brother and I were homeschooled growing up because my mom was a flight attendant for Delta Airlines, and she did it for like 35 years. And my dad stayed home, so stay-at-home dad, and my mom was a flight attendant, and they wanted us to be homeschooled so that we could travel anytime they wanted to take us away. So growing up, I'm incredibly fortunate to be able to go all over the world and kind of interact with other people and that sort of thing. So really, really fortunate growing up to be able to have that opportunity to travel. So I think that's really been a big part of kind of who I am now.
Can you tell us where you got to travel?
Oh gosh, yeah. Growing up, we went to the UK a lot. Interestingly, my husband's British, so I ended up living there for a long time. But we went to the UK a lot. We went to Italy. We went to a lot of places in Europe, France. So that was family trips. And then when I was 14, I look back now and I think to myself, like, I'm so glad my parents did it. But when I was 14, they got me enrolled in a program with the school. So I did start regular school when I was probably about 11 or 12. Very, very shy, incredibly shy, not very many friends, so kind of tough getting into school. And they signed me up for this program that sent me to Russia for 3 weeks. And I lived with a host family for 3 weeks, 14, traveled, all over the place, in the southern part of Russia. And that was like my first experience of really doing something very independent. There were a couple other people there, but there weren't many. And I was with this family most of the time. And I remember that quite clearly being, it's normal. I'm 14, I'm traveling, I'm, going to Russia all by myself. So that was a really interesting. I ended up living there for a year after college. So a lot of time in Russia, and I used to work for the government. So I've done Afghanistan, I've done Africa as well. So very, very fortunate to have been able to travel all over the world and kind of meet other people and just have experiences that not many people have.
Where in Russia in particular?
St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg. Yeah,
yes.
Got it.
Such an amazing city. So I got to live there for a year, and I lived with 2 different families. So I used to speak Russian. Now I don't really anymore. And this was back in 05, 06. So yeah, it was amazing. So it was to learn the language. And because it was a government scholarship, there was kind of a commitment to come back and then work off the scholarship by working for the government. So I was hoping that would be my in. And I came back and I got a job with a big consulting company called Booz Allen Hamilton, kind of one of many. And I was doing kind of nonsense stuff. I was living in DC and I'd applied for the intelligence community, and pretty quickly I got accepted. And they, did the whole security checks and everything. And I started working for the government as an intelligence officer.
So what I'm getting right now is that this whole geek pack is just a ruse. This is just a front. And you just totally blew your cover. And that's your story.
It's my story and I'm sticking to it.
That's great. So you've joined the CIA, essentially.
No, I didn't join the CIA. I joined another intelligence community department.
What can you say about your time there that is not going to land us both in federal prison?
I can talk about it for days. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It was such a cool job. I got to travel loads. Of course, my job in DC was not as exciting as when I was traveling. I had the opportunity to deploy twice. So this was, let's see, I started with them in probably 2007. So kind of leading up to the height of Iraq. It was still big, but what was happening in Afghanistan was really starting to pick up. Mm-hmm. So I deployed to Afghanistan in 2008 and then again in 2009 into 2010. I was doing 2 deployments there. On my first deployment is when I actually met my now husband. We met in Afghanistan and dated as best as you can. So he was British military. He's since retired. And we did long distance for a long time. And of course, he was in the UK and I was in DC, but we were traveling and deploying and everything. It was tough. So I ended up after, I guess I was with the government probably about 5 years. I ended up leaving to move to the UK and ended up getting my master's in London. And then we lived there for a number of years before moving back here to the US.
Is that how you left? Like, did you apply for master's programs before you left and get a visa to get your master's program? Was that the actual move?
That was the next step. Yeah.
What did you get your master's on?
I got my master's in international political economy from the London School of Economics. So
you're still thinking like government. You're still thinking, This is my life. This is what I do. This is what I know. So let's just get a master's in that.
Yep. I didn't know anything different. And I thought, surely I'll be able to find a job doing that. And, lo and behold, what I hadn't really considered is he was still in the service when I moved. And when we got married is you move a lot as a military wife, and holding down a career that has career progression is really hard when you move every year or two. And that's what we did. So it was all of a sudden my professional life, it had this great upward trajectory. And then it came to a screeching halt when I couldn't find work that would move with me. And then I was just in whatever 9 to 5 I could find wherever we were.
Where did you go and what did you do in each place?
So I started in a town called Horsham, and I was doing my master's and I wasn't working then. And then we were down on the South Coast and I worked at a university. And then there I started in doing something called research ethics. So university students and professors would do research. And then I was kind of trying to figure out, like, was it ethical? Like if they were doing medical stuff or anything. So it was, not all that interesting at all, but it was a job and it kind of got me busy. And then after that, I worked in a cybersecurity unit. So kind of coming back into my kind of security roots, and I didn't know anything about cybersecurity. And it was in that job where I had my first taste of code. Never once had I done it before. Everything with the government, everything with my education was always like writing or analytical or nothing techie. And I could check my email and do things like that, but nothing beyond that.
How did you get coding assignments without having had any background? How did that come about like the first time? And you're like, are you crazy? Like, how did that start?
Yeah, so it was yesterday. My boss walked in and my back was to him. He walked in and the cybersecurity unit had a website. And he walks in and for some reason, he looks at me and he says, I want our website to be able to do X. He wanted, when you have like a plus and like FAQs, for example, and you click and there's the drop down and then you can unclick and it goes away. The collapsible
accordion.
Yeah, he wanted that feature on the website. And he looked at me and he said, I want our website to be able to do this. I want these FAQs. He said, so figure it out. And then he walks out. And, I have absolutely no idea. I know what he's referring to, but I don't know how to do it. No experience at all. And I look at my colleague sat on my right, and he kind of looks at me and sees me wide-eyed. And he's like, don't worry, let's Google it and see if we can figure it out. And sure enough, we Googled it, and this snippet of code comes up, and I copied it and I pasted it into the back end of the website, and I hit save and I updated the web, and it worked. And I was like completely blown away. Like, this thing, I just Googled this thing and I don't even know what it means. And I put it here, and then this change happens on the screen, and I was completely just enamored from then on. And that was probably like 2 years before I started my business, because I was still in this mindset of, real jobs. And I thought to myself, oh, this is the ticket. This is how I can get a remote job with a company where I'll have career progression, but I can work from anywhere. So I really needed that location independence because of my husband's job. Mm-hmm. So I thought, this is it. I'm going to learn all these skills, and then this company will hire me and I can work from anywhere. And, sure enough, I never got hired because they want, an education, a computer science degree. They want 10 years experience, all this stuff. And it was really deflating because I'd worked so hard and learned all this stuff self-taught, only to either be rejected or never even responded to when I would apply for stuff. So really, really kind of tough lesson to learn that I thought that was that. I thought that was the answer. But because never once, ever did I ever think I would own my own business doing something. That was just not an option that I ever considered.
So at this point, are you already tinkering with WordPress?
So in that kind of 2 years when I was learning and everything, I realized that WordPress is a good thing to know because so many people use it. But then I also kind of realized that tons of people use it, but they don't know it very well. So I thought the only way I can set myself apart is if I learn it really, really well, like the backend code, PHP, like all the scary stuff that breaks websites, that causes them to go down. I thought that's the only way I can set myself apart from everyone else. So I went down this path of WordPress development because I didn't want to just be, one in a million people saying I can build WordPress websites. I wanted to go deeper and know more so I could do the hard things. So that's what kind of led me into WordPress.
So at which point in these 2 years you start thinking that this can be a business?
So by this point, we'd moved to the US. My husband got assigned a liaison job in North Carolina. So we're in North Carolina, and a friend of ours had just retired from the military. He was starting his own business, a drone business. And he knew I was kind of learning this on the side. And he said, will you build me a WordPress website? And I was like, no, I can't do that. It's like, yes, you can, because that's what you are learning to do, right? I was like, yeah, but I'm learning to do it for a business, for a company. He said, well, why can't you do it for me? So I'll pay you and all this. So I was like, okay, I will. And he loved it. And he said, why don't you do this for small businesses? Why do you have to work? And that was when the idea of starting my own business was planted. And then it was still probably about 6 or 9 months after that I finally took the plunge. So my journey to just getting started was super long because I didn't know how to find clients. I didn't know I could start an online business. I didn't have a community. Learning to code is hard enough, but doing it on your own is really hard. So my journey is very, very long. And that's what I try to shorten for all my students.
Now, I'm going to tell you just a tiny snippet of my story of how I got started with WordPress sites, because I'm sure that you did things a lot better than I did. So I want to compare notes here. So I have a computer science degree and I wanted to be a developer, but the only job that I got was project management. So I feel like I'm getting derailed from my dream of coding. I wanted to work for a company. I must have applied to like 32 IBM jobs back in 2003, just wanting to be a developer. Nothing. I got one job as a project manager. And of course, blessing in disguise, right? Everything kind of leads us to where we are now. But it was then, years and years later, somebody asked me to just make a change to their website. And I said, sure, here you go. And I've been doing HTML since 1997. I mean, like, sure, like super easy for me. And they wanted to pay me. And I'm like, no, like it was just a favor, right? Like if Julia, I just come to your house and you're like, hey, can I just have like an egg because I'm making a cake, right? Oh, and I'm gonna pay you for it. You're gonna be like, no, just keep the egg, right? Like I'm not charging money for favors. And that person was extremely ethical. She was running a business. She's like, no, I'm paying you for your time. So put a number to it. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care about your mindset problems.
Yes.
You're coming up with a number so that I can pay you for what you just did. And I think she gave me like $100. And that was kind of like my first, like, people would pay for this, right? And I'm still working full time. I'm not thinking that I'm making a business. And like you, I had no idea about online business, which is totally ironic because we are making websites, helping people get online, right? Have their online businesses. And I didn't put that together either. I was making websites for years without building an online community, without learning about really marketing online. And I was charging very little. Like at one point, I think I had like 7 clients that I was supporting while I was working full time. And that was making me around $800 a month. And to me, that was like, great. I'm like, that's all I need. And I would have conversations with them. They're like, well, grow it. Like, quit your job and do that. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this full time. I do like, this is not a thing. This is just, a little hobby kind of thing. I'd love to know what that story was for your business. Like, what were you charging? What was it like to all of a sudden wake up and say like, oh, online marketing? It's something. So tell me that story of your business.
Yeah. So it was our friend who was starting his drone business. That was like the first website that I built. And then that was when I kind of thought, oh, maybe I could do this. And I learned more and more about WordPress. And I hadn't found an online community. I didn't know how to, find clients online. I didn't know any of that. And I can't remember where I found this lead, but it was a lead. And this woman, she ran an agency and she was looking for a WordPress developer. And I remember thinking, oh, this is the ticket. This is going to be my first gig, first kind of contract work. And sure enough, I got it. And I'll never forget when Neil came home and I had champagne ready because, I got it. And I started at $20 an hour. And I probably would have gone for less because it was my first one. And I just didn't know what to charge. And I just wanted it desperately. I wanted that validation that like someone would pay me for a skill that I taught myself, from Google and YouTube.
I started at $30 an hour. It's like,
yeah. So I of course, looking back now, I kind of think, oh, I should have started a lot more considering what I knew. But yeah, I started there. And fortunately, not long after I started with her, I then found an online community of other kind of online service providers. And I learned about finding clients in Facebook groups and adding value. And of course, remembering back to my previous career, my social media presence was zero. It had to be for security reasons. So I'm new to social media anyway on a personal level. And then I kind of figured this out. And it's like, oh, there's this whole world I didn't even know existed from my previous career. So within a very short period of time, I joined this community and I kind of figure out how to do things and come to find out my skills of knowing WordPress development and the coding and cleaning up malware and that sort of thing, not many people have. I didn't realize that. And I became sought after in referrals and things very quickly. So I was fortunate. I was able to go from $20 an hour to $75 an hour in less than 6 months. So my hourly rate, every time I got something new, I would raise my rate. And, it went even higher than that, but in a very short period of time. So that's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about teaching women this hard skill, because not only is your confidence going to go way up, but you can immediately double, triple, quadruple your hourly rate, because that's what, people are paying for these skills that not many people have. So that's another, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about learning that skill that only men can do, or whatever nonsense you hear about or see in Hollywood. So, which I know, as a developer and a computer science major, I'm sure you get that.
Oh, I was one of 5 girls in a class of 90 people in like a single classroom. So I always sat in the front. I said, screw all of you.
Yes.
I am here to do this thing. It
Yeah.
was actually pretty amazing. It was like,
Yeah.
yep, like last woman standing.
Yeah.
And that gave me actually a lot of confidence. Like you say, just having these technical skills for me, they're like a secret power.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys, I'm going to say something that is going to sound terrible, but it's just possible to do when you know the tech. You know, when you have visited the New York Times website enough and they put up a sign saying, oh, now you have to pay. You've reached your
Oh, yeah.
limit of how
Yeah.
many. And they leave the article in the background. It's just like a pop up kind of thing that you can't get through because there is no way to close it. You just right click, inspect, and remove the cover. Just like
Yeah.
remove it using CSS right there in your browser. You
Oh,
can keep reading the article. And it's like one of those things. And like my husband was looking at a page once and there was a really badly placed image with the navigation buttons on the
oh,
sides,
yeah.
and the navigation buttons were covering something that was critical to the image. And he's like, oh, he can't see. And he's trying to resize the page. I'm
Inspect
like,
tools.
oh, honey, just hold on. Right
Yeah.
click, inspect, remove, you're done. Now you can see it. It's a
Amazing.
superpower, right? CSS is like I adore CSS.
Yeah.
So I really admire and I love the fact that you teach people how to start from scratch. That is one thing that I never did, is to learn WordPress from scratch. For me, I don't care what WordPress theme I use because I just do everything on CSS. You can give me like a blank template and I will just modify everything using
Oh, yeah.
CSS rather than doing the way that you do it, which is the hard way because you have to know a lot more languages than I do to go from scratch and be able to build from the bottom up.
Mhm.
So once I heard from the Geek Pack students, they were telling me that you teach people how to like just start from the bottom and like build a theme. And I'm like, whoa, right? Like I
Yeah.
am a WordPress expert. I can't do that. So you're
Yeah.
teaching really, really valuable skills in here. So can you tell me where Geek Pack comes in, how you start to teach this? Because you could have just continued on being a well sought after developer. What happened that made you go, maybe I can start teaching this and actually, scale this business?
Yeah, sure. So I've started my online business and I'm, I wouldn't even say agency, but I've got a lot of clients and working a lot. And I think I've brought someone on to kind of help with a few things. And I enjoy it. Most of my clients I like, some are, pain in the ass, just like, as normal.
Mhm.
And on the personal side, my husband has retired from the military. And it's this kind of point of, okay, what's next? We always assumed that he would get some, security job, and he was speaking to Google, and, there were a lot of kind of Silicon Valley jobs that he was chatting with. That's just what we thought we would do. He would move to California and, get the house and the mortgage and everything else. And then we kind of thought, well, actually, when are we ever going to have an opportunity to travel when I could work from anywhere? So we made the decision to sell everything. We had 2 cars, just get rid of everything. And we bought an RV and we traveled the US for a year and a half and we lived in an RV.
How
And
was that?
yeah, it was amazing. It was a fantastic opportunity. And it was actually there. So my business exploded doing that because it kind of led into the teaching side. But for my husband, he started his own business as well while we were traveling. So it worked really well for him. He runs motorcycle expeditions. So we've got a fleet of big BMW, kind of big CC, all off road. So think like 7 days camping in the backcountry, all on motorcycles. So he runs those small group kind of expeditions, which he loves. I mean, he absolutely loves his job and the business that he's grown. And so we start traveling, and I think, oh, I'll start an Instagram account. And I didn't have one before that, and document the traveling. So I start to document, and people kind of start saying, well, how are you able to travel full time? Are your parents rich or independently wealthy, or, all these assumptions? And it's like, no, hang on. I have this skill that I taught myself from Google and YouTube that I turned into a business, and I can now do it from anywhere. And people are like, well, I want to learn how to do that so I can have the lifestyle as well. So I initially started with a free coding challenge, just basic HTML, CSS, like build a 2-page website, just with HTML and CSS. And people loved it. The very first day, so it's a 5-day coding challenge. It still exists to this day. And the very first day is Inspect Tools because it blows people's minds because it's so cool. So that was the lead in. And I'd never taught anything ever, especially anything techie, but I learned through Google and YouTube. And I learned the hard way because there was no curriculum. I would play around with code, but then it didn't kind of develop into like a tangible product or project or website. So it was just do this and do that. All the free resources, I've done them all. And they're really good, but it didn't kind of connect the dots for me. So when people loved the coding challenge, they kind of said, what else can you teach us? And they enjoyed my teaching style, super casual, like, I make mistakes while I'm teaching and then I show them. So they kind of see it real time in the sense that it's like, no one's perfect. It's okay to make mistakes.
Right.
So that was kind of teaching side, but I knew without a shadow of a doubt that if I was ever going to create any sort of kind of program where I taught coding, a community had to be a huge, huge part of it. And GeekPack is actually my husband. I'm rocking my swag. It's actually my husband that came up with the name because I have a dog and we were kind of joking about how, the pack and a geek pack, and it all kind of came from there. So the community and now the brand and the business is GeekPack. So when I was kind of going back to when I was learning, I did it all by myself in a vacuum. And I mean, when you're playing around with CSS or HTML or PHP and something doesn't work, you just want to bang your head against the wall. You want to throw your computer out the window. You get so frustrated. And my journey was so long because I was doing it all by myself. And I joined a couple of the free coding groups on Facebook. And people are mean, really, really mean.
Yeah.
And if someone would ask a question, the answers would be, you call yourself a developer and you don't know the answer to that. Just horrible. Yeah, terrible. So I decided that if I was going to do this, the teaching, the skills, that a community would be along with it. And it would be everything that those other communities were not. It would be supportive. It would be encouraging. No question is too silly. No matter what, we troubleshoot with you. We will look at your code. We will celebrate your wins. We will pick you up when you're down. And that is exactly what GeekPack is now. And I think we're, 1,600 plus strong now and growing. So yeah, really the whole GeekPack mission, our vision, our core values is very much empowering women, giving them that confidence by learning this, because it's not just the skill.
Right.
Learning that skill, your confidence explodes, you feel empowered, you feel like you can do anything. And it all kind of just starts with the single thing of learning to code.
I think that's incredible. Before I ask you the next question, I just have to say about just really quickly about Inspect Tools. When you said that it blows people's minds, sometimes when I'm teaching people about the design basics of a website, I'll pull up somebody that I admire, right? Somebody's website, and I'll just do Inspect Tools and I'll just change things on their website.
Yeah.
And I'll move this here and I'll move this there and I'll change the title and I'll change the picture and I'll be like, okay, like this is kind of like what we're going for. And, as we're talking, like the person starts to get nervous. They're like, are you going to change their website back? Yeah. and I'm like, oh no, I haven't actually like done it on their side. But they're like, I can't believe that you just changed their website. I'm like, no, I didn't. It's just like, look, refresh, it's back. Right. Yes. So that was just super funny when people go and they're like, wow. Can I ask you? So the people who are listening right now, they are online coaches who want to have the kind of success that you did. Could you give them, I want to say like the top 3 main lessons for you on growing your audience and growing your program?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So leading with value and constantly kind of everything that I do and everything I've done, I've led with value. A team, building up a team of people around you. Every single person on my team, we're a team of 7, has come from my community. They believe strongly in the GeekPack mission. They are in it for the long haul. Those 2, 100%. And then I would say create a tribe of diehard fans and a community, that community feel. They're part of a family. They have that tribe swag. All my students get a GeekPack t-shirt to create this feel, because working online can be lonely. You're by yourself most of the time. But knowing that there is a community there to support you, those easily are the 3 things that have catapulted my success.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And let me ask you, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have of you as a successful businesswoman?
That I have been techie forever, that I went to school and I learned everything the normal way, that I've been doing it for a long time, and that I can do it because I had all that previous experience, whereas I didn't at all. I learned Google and YouTube, and the degrees that I have nothing to do with what I do now.
And if everybody who's listening had to do what you're about to tell them to do, and they have to do it in the next 24 hours, what would that thing be?
Do something that makes you uncomfortable, that puts you outside your comfort zone, but that is a step towards the person that you want to be a year from now. Yeah.
I love how you put that, because it's not just that gets you towards your goal, is start embodying the person who you want to be. So there's no way to go wrong. That's exactly who you want to be. You just stepped into it. I love how you said that. Julia, thank you so much for doing this. It's been amazing hearing about your journey. It's crazy story. I've loved every second of this. So where can people go and find you and follow you?
Oh gosh, I would say the best place is probably my Instagram, and that is Julia the Geek. And that's business, personal, kind of all things going on, travel, everything is there. So yeah, Julia the Geek is the best place to go.
Awesome. And that's the link that we're going to put in the show notes. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you so
You've
much.
been a pleasure to talk to.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.